you check the children? Show a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes. That is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I'm known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego and EP318. Join me here for a bit of palaver on Hail to Stephen King. And this is going to be a little bit different of an episode because it's not covering something that, King actually created himself. In the over 300 episodes of this program that I've been doing these 6 years, I have occasionally veered into things that were just very King-inspired. And there is no arguing that Shining Vale, which came out, it premiered this past March, starring Courtney Cox, Ray Kinnear, what's her name? Gus Burney, I think, is the one who plays the daughter. I forget the name of the son. But, yeah, and Mira Sorvino, who's great in this as well. But you can't argue that this was not heavily inspired by The Shining. Not just the actual novel itself, but also the Kubrick film from 1980. And, I mean, you just watch the trailer to this alone, and you're like, okay, we're gonna have a female protagonist instead, played by Courtney Cox, and she's great in this. And it's also it's dark. It is dark comedy at its finest. But I mean, yeah, it's reference city when it comes to King. It starts out guns blazing for the middle episodes because there is 8 episodes to this since it premiered on Starz, and it has already been confirmed for a second season, which is kind of cool. But yeah, man, they veer away from the intense, like, Shining, just kind of callbacks and stuff like that. But then, by the time we get to the final episode, the 8th and final one, at least of this first season, they go all out. And so, as I was watching the show, I was like, oh, wow, there's a reference there, there's a reference there, there's a reference there. And yet, it does also kind of embody its own sort of, like, flavor and stuff, especially with the comedic nature of it, because it's very vulgar. We're talking, like, F-bombs galore. They have a very amusing, the Phelps, as they're called, they have a very amusing family dynamic. Most notably, they are very, very unhinged and unfiltered. Courtney Cox especially, man. But yeah, it's a very entertaining show, and the fact that each episode is only 30 minutes long, so I was able to binge the whole first season in just like 2 nights, I think. So yeah, it was very just lighthearted in that regard, but it does also focus upon mental instability and mental health and stuff like that, and so much so that they actually give like warnings at the beginning of certain episodes in particular that really explore it significantly more. But so here's where all of the King similarities really start to come into play. So, I mean, in the very first episode where they're moving into this estate in Connecticut, they're coming from, New York City. So, big sort of change to being in like a more rural sort of area of New England in comparison with New York City. And so, drastic difference there. But one of the reasons for the change of scenery specifically was because of the fact that there's a dude who came to fix their sink, and Courtney Cox decided to boink him. Courtney Cox, I love you. You're so hot on that show. Anyway, there's my South Park reference for that episode, guys. But yeah, so there's some infidelity, and obviously that's the kind of thing that causes serious frustration in a marriage. And so she is also a writer. She's experiencing writer's block. And so this is where, right off the bat, similarity to, The Shining and Jack Torrance specifically, because Jack Torrance in The Shining is obviously a aspiring writer, but he's got some personal demons and some mental health aspects and stuff, and he's also dealing with the writer's block of this, newfound isolation, maybe hopefully being able to help, and well, we all know how things go in The Shining, this estate that they move into in Connecticut, it has kind of a sordid history. It's been unoccupied for 2 years at this particular point when Kinnear and the family purchase it, and yeah, there's a spiritual presence there because there was the murders that went down, man. So unlike in The Shining, it's not like, previous like caretakers or anything like that. But nonetheless, yeah, there is a dark spiritual presence which is manifested by none other than Mira Sorvino. And rest peacefully to her pops, who just passed away recently. But yeah, I can't even remember the last time I saw Mira in something, and she's really amusing as this 50s housewife who is the spirit that kind of assists with, Courtney Cox's character kind of getting her mojo back and almost like writing through her, so to speak, because, yeah, in the first episode, she's got, her agent is like about to drop her. She's like, we need at least, we need some chapters, man, you know, what's going on? And so, yeah, it's amusing. But even in that very first episode, when Mira's character is forced, you know, just, she reveals herself to Courtney Cox's character, so to speak, you look at the curtains, as you see right here, and that's obviously the very, very signature and significant and just well-loved from the, you know, from the original Kubrick film. I mean, it's a very distinctive pattern, and you know that was a very, very deliberate nod. But I mean, as the episodes progress, like, there's manifestations of Mira Sorvino's character, like, dead in a tub, so we all know that that is a Shining reference. So, and then the fact that Courtney Cox's character is over 16 years sober, and we all know that, you know, Jack Torrance was struggling with the sauce in The Shining as well, and so there's a scene, as you're looking at right here, that is almost exactly reminiscent of the bar scene where Jack just gets that little pour, and it just kind of unravels from there. So, I mean, majestically shot. This is a beautiful looking show. It does some very interesting camera work, some of the weird Dutch tilts and stuff that they do, but they found this breathtaking looking house that does almost feel like an overlook, like a hotel, in just its size and its grandeur, and also just kind of that little hint of spookiness to it, so that's cool. And then there's also, like, it wasn't until later in the series that it started to become apparent to me that even though, okay, the son is drastically different, okay? He's kind of a heftier kid, and he's a nerd, likes to, you know, play with his VR headset and stuff like that, but there is another spirit, there's actually multiple spirits at this house, because some murderous shizzle went down with Mira Sorvino's character. But, yeah, there is a little girl who is appearing to the son in this VR game, and so he thinks it's like, I don't know, some weird NFT or, you know, some Easter egg that he stumbled upon. But yeah, so just like with Danny Torrance, you know, the son seeing a spiritual presence, and most notably from a childlike standpoint. So yeah, the little girl is one of the eerier aspects of the entire show, because it is relatively lighthearted. I mean, it veers into the horror from time to time, most notably when one character is compelled to jump off of this building and gets, like, impaled on, like, this fence that's being built. It's one of the most graphic things in the entire show. But, excuse me, but yeah, for the most part, I mean, yeah, it veers into the lighter territory, and it kind of very, very comfortably resides there. But, yeah, and then also, so something you see in the trailers, which I'm not trying to be, like, super spoilery about this, but I mean, especially in the back half of this series, most notably in the final episode, where there is some axe play that goes down. So much so that there's a bit where Greg Kinnear, who is hilarious in this, he's really funny, and he has kind of like his own personal crisis that transpires halfway through after he quits his job and whatnot. But great chemistry between Kinnear and Cox. They're really fun together. But so. He finds a hatchet or an axe outside in this, like, woodshed area, which is a part of the home, and he's like, I don't know if it's a hatchet or an axe or whatever, but it does come into play in that last episode, because without getting into super spoilery details or anything like that, I mean, they recreate the infamous Piers Johnny scene. They don't say that particular line of dialogue, but I mean, it's framed with, you know, the busting open of the door and, like, the looking through and stuff like that. So yeah, man, I mean, it very much just wears that proverbial heart on its sleeve in a lot of ways, and there is eventual ghostly possession that goes down with Sorvino's character and with Courtney Cox, and just, you know, like what happens with Jack Torrance, where the power of all of these negative spirits, like, basically takes control of him, albeit it's in a far more hilarious fashion with Courtney Cox, you know, because this is at its core a comedy series as opposed to something that's, like, really hardcore horror or anything like that. But yeah, so the ghostly possession aspect does eventually go down, and what else? Just the way they shoot this a lot of the time, especially the hallway shots, very reminiscent of just the, I don't know, almost claustrophobic nature of some of those hallways that Kubrick just got this, you know, just very interesting sense of dread about, because yeah, there are bits where Cox's character is walking around, and there's even this callback to the twins in The Shining, because she's experiencing double vision, and she looks down this hallway and she sees her son, and suddenly there's two of him, and then, you know, as the vision, you know, kind of clears up for her, she's just like, oh, it's my son at the end of the hallway, sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, and I mean, goodness, what else? I mean, there's just so many of them in here. Even when there is a revelation about a particular character, And this is what I'm assuming they're going to explore in the second season, is a little more about the Rosemary character, which is played by Mira Sorvino. Because, yeah, you see a black and white photo and you're just like, you know, just like at the very end of the Kubrick film, and you're just like, wait a minute, you know, where you see Jack Torrance and played by Nicholson in this photo from, you know, decades and decades past. And so this is a photo from like the 1850s. And so you're like, wait a minute, this Rosemary chick was supposed to be like a housewife or something? But they do the Kubrick callback thing, which is interesting, and I would imagine that they will explore that significantly more. Yeah, I mentioned the double sun and the twin scene and stuff like that. So yeah, man, I mean, it's not just the callback shots that really epitomize this. It's I mean, even when you find her manuscript that she's been printing out, and it's very much like the all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. You know how the way that he printed it up on the typewriter, so it was like making a design kind of thing. They even have that callback. So. But it's really just from the exploration of a writer trying to kind of keep it together that I think is one of the biggest and most important similarities about this particular show. And yeah, I mean, all of the ensemble are very funny. There's even a father of this kid that the Phelps son is playing video games with, his VR stuff and whatnot. That character is incredibly funny, and he kind of strikes up a friendship with Kinnear. You know, so both of the dads become friends, and so there's some of the most significant laughs, I would say, they definitely came from that particular character. And another interesting King connection is the fact that Gus Burney, what a strange name for that particular actress, but she was previously in the Spike TV series The Mist, and so I was like, I couldn't even remember if I'd seen her in much after that particular series, but yeah, lo and behold, she's in it, and it's really, it veers away from the King stuff in the middle of the series, like I said, and that's where it really kind of, I guess, just, you know, finds its footing as not being, because, you know, what, the sincerest form of flattery, you know, is the whole emulation and everything, and so I did at least appreciate that this kind of explored a whole lot more in the midsection, and yeah, most notably with Bernie's character, she has one of the most amusing kind of angles, because so there's this guy at her new school that she thinks is like super hot or whatever, and turns out he's like a devout Christian kid, and so she joins like the celibacy club because she's trying to get in his pants. It's a very amusing dynamic, and she, you know, he's a spiritual kid as well. And so that's most definitely where she decides to join the choir, and she gets baptized and all this different stuff. So it's really her subplot that is the most drastically different from the Shining source material, obviously, that they just drew so much inspiration from. It's her subplot, and then also just the plight of Kinnear's character, and he's the sweetest dude in this, and he puts up with a lot of shit from his wife. Like, at one particular point, they have this cocktail party, which is funny, because there's only like, what, 4 or 5 people there, and he feels bad for kissing this chick who he's worked with for a number of years, and turns out, well, Courtney Cox is kind of a freak in this, man, you know? I mean, if you thought Cougar Town was crazy, right? I mean, so yeah, those are the 2 subplots that I think really work to make this unique and add just some additional lighthearted aspects to it, because, yeah, like I said, the entire ensemble is hilarious, really good chemistry, and once again, King references galore, and I mean, even without revealing it, like the fate of a dog, I saw this article on Screen Rant a few weeks ago. They were talking about just, you know, the nature of this canine, and they were making, you know, Cujo and Pet Sematary references. I didn't really get as much of a connection of that. I mean, this is through and through a female-empowered re-envisioning of The Shining, and yet, you know, implementing its own, like, specific and distinctive flavor and stuff like that. So 8 episodes, guys. Yeah, this is a little bit of a shorter review, but it's funny because we talked about this very briefly, I think during the last review roundup, because Marcia had watched it, and yeah, she was impressed. She thought it was fun and recommended it to me. I mean, we were all about it after seeing the trailer and seeing how just leaning into the source material that obviously derived a lot of inspiration from, you know, in The Shining, but even more so the Kubrick film, with just the way it was shot and everything, but, you know, taking a less serious and kind of lighthearted tone. I think it actually worked for this, and it is really fun as, you know, a constant reader like myself to check out something like this and I'm just like, oh, there's an Easter egg, there's an Easter egg, there's an Easter egg, you know, you get a present, you get a card, and all that different silliness. So yeah, man, it's a fun show, and once again, with only 8 30-minute episodes, it's a quick binge. Unfortunately, I know a lot of people don't have Stars. Recently, Bruce Campbell was talking about, he's like, you want to know why Ash versus the Evil Dead show got canceled? He's like, because we were on Stars, and if it had been on like HBO or, you know, even Netflix or something, he's like, would have fared a whole lot better. So I know Stars is one of those, like, okay, you have to add it. It's very much like the little sibling compared to, I mean, hell, Stars is even like a little lesser than like Cinemax, I'd say, at this particular point, because, you know, it was always HBO and Showtime, and then I guess Stars is right around that same sort of sector. It's probably why Outcast got canceled after just 2 seasons, because of the fact that it was on Cinemax. So I know it is tough. There are, I think, 7-day free trials for Stars, so it's more than enough time, especially if you're a constant reader and a King fan, to just breeze through this series, and it's a lot of fun. And yeah, I cannot recommend it enough, especially for all of the amusing just little bits that, you know, it was unique in its own right, despite having all those amusing callbacks and stuff like that. So I extend a grande gracias, everybody. Yep, as I mentioned, a little bit of a shorter episode today, because I don't want to like get super spoilery about this show, because I most definitely could, but I just had to, you know, give some impressions about it, because it is just that much of a celebration of El Rey in a lot of ways, which I really appreciate the hell out of. So, yeah, everybody, I have been Jaime and Fuego, and once again, a grande gracias and all of that good stuff. We much appreciate any sort of liking and sharing and subscribing and stuff like that. But yeah, this show was quite a treat. I was very entertained, even though I watched the first episode with Lady Catherine, and she's like, oh, this show's stupid, like the tone is a little off. I don't know, what's the best, so if you ever watched Santa Clarita Diet, which was the show with Drew Barrymore and Timothy Olyphant, that is, at least, like, the dark sense of humor that pervades this, especially, you know, with all of the, you know, King tie-ins and stuff like that. That is the best way as far as, like, describing the tone of this. And if, you know, hey, if you're not on board after an episode or two, I mean, you might not be into it. But I don't know. I say stick it out and, you know, do a free trial. You know, give this show a shot, because it is quite fun. But, yeah, everybody, hail to Stephen King, a little bit of a just veering into the side path of just this show, and how much I enjoyed it. So, yeah, as far as stuff in the next coming weeks here on this program, I mean, yeah, I'm finally going to get around to doing the Road Rage, which was a Joe Hill and Stephen King comic based on it was kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? It was a tribute to Richard Matheson. And so in his story Duel, which, you know, was famously adapted by Steven Spielberg, and so that's probably going to be next week's episode, and I'm still trying to figure out if we're going to shift the book of the month to a Saturday situation, which is where live streams are just so much easier to do on the weekend for me with my schedules and stuff like that, as opposed to trying to do something live in the middle of the week. Because, yeah, Blaze is actually, I'm hoping to be the next book of the month, but I still want to do some Dark Tower coverage, because it's the 40th anniversary of the original book, and then it's the 35th anniversary of Drawing of the Three. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I started this program mainly just to cover the Tower stuff, and then it just veered into all kinds of other coolness over all of these episodes. But yeah, so I'm still trying to iron that out. But yeah, man, Shining Vale, a King-inspired show that I was quite impressed with. Have you guys watched Shining Vale? Are you more or less inclined to, with the fact that it is deriving so much inspiration from El Rey? I mean, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Is it, in your estimation, like just a, I don't know, kind of a hack artist sort of approach? But once again, it does really incorporate a lot of uniqueness, most notably with some of the extended family, as opposed to just being a blatant ripoff, or almost like a remake of sorts, which is what, you know, many people would kind of envision. But yeah, it's lewd, it's amusing, it's occasionally violent, and it's a lot of fun, and I totally recommend it. So yeah, everybody, that's going to be the end of the proceedings for today. Once again, danke, arigato, merci. Thank you so very much for tuning into this program, and stay tuned next week. I'll also be eventually getting back into another Barker at the Moon segment. I just haven't decided if I'm going to jump right to Damnation Game, or if I'm going to I don't know, cover something different, because I did finish up all of those books of blood, last month, and so that was a lot of fun. Another review that is going to be coming very soon is actually Nick Cutter's The Deep. Spare some Cutter, me brother, if we're going to make another Kubrick reference. But yeah, that book was the shit. I just recently finished it, and I'm kind of on a Nick Cutter craze right now between The Troop and then The Deep and stuff like that. So yeah, that'll probably be the next installment of King recommended contemporary horror novels, because I've been doing that here and there. And yeah, just, I don't know, kind of trying to diversify the content just the weeest bit. And but yeah, we are less than a month away from Fairy Tale. I cannot friggin' wait for King's return to fantasy, and so that's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, comic reviews, all kinds of fun stuff from a literary standpoint coming in the next few weeks for Sai King. So it is still kind of a bummer that Salem was like, got bumped to next year, because I was supposed to come out next month. But hey, we can't win them all, I guess. So anyway, peeps, until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, I shall say hasta luego, and amigos, constant readers and viewers alike, say thank you. I'm hopeful that we have been well met, and that we share more of this palaver sooner rather than later. And until then, remember to, if you haven't read The Shining, I mean, read Stephen King, for God's sake, and stay scared. But in this case, yeah, I recommend Shining Vale. Check out that silly shizzle. It's fun.